Um, so that of course doesn't keep us from doing the rest of our work, but we will have our budget hearings will begin probably in the next couple of weeks, and as we go through the budget bit by bit and piece by piece, that the governor puts out his budget, and then we as a legislature, the assembly on one side, the Senate on the other side, prepare their own budget, and then we hopefully work out the differences to everybody's satisfaction. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, and I can talk about a lot of things. Obviously, healthcare is my biggest area of focus. That's who I am. I'm starting my 8th year as the chair of the Assembly Health Committee. I'm the second longest serving health committee chair in the history of the state. There's one person ahead of me, is 10 years, back in the 50s, and so we'll see if that happens or not. But for me, the continuity that's provided, the ability to learn the issues and focus on healthcare, I think is a really good thing, and we're benefiting from the current term limits. They allow us to be able to become more experts in those areas that are important to us. So we've done a fair amount of work in that, and we can certainly talk about some of that. But for me, a lot of this is about hearing what's on your mind. But you mentioned early on broadband. In August of 21, so we passed a very significant broadband package in California to build a middle mile network, which is not the big huge cables that are off the coast or come across the ocean, but the sort of the backbone that follows the major highways that allow for internet service providers to be able to tap into. The state, it's a 10,000-mile project that has to be completed by 2026 because a great deal of the funding that we're relying on for this is from the federal government. So I've been very fortunate to be very active in this area. There are 4 members of the legislature who are appointed to a middle mile commission, and we meet on a monthly basis online, but in the background we do a lot of other work on this. My job is to ensure that we get the most bang for our buck in our counties that, like Mendocino County, that have huge challenges in some areas with broadband access. And so I am the voice in the Assembly for rural California, and Senator McGuire is the voice in the Senate. So we've got 2 of the 4 legislators from the North Coast, which I think is significant. And then they appointed just at the last meeting Valerie Starkey, who is a supervisor from Del Norte County, to be a county advisor. So we've got really good representation here. So my job is to keep the agency's feet to the fire. That includes the PUC and Caltrans, and try to get them to work together, something they've never done before, and don't seem to be really good at it yet. So but we're trying. It's painful sometimes. Sometimes it's really painful. But that's a really significant thing that we're working on, and we are making progress. I'm really, really happy to say that. We could I don't know. Karen, where do you want to go here? I could just jabber on, but I would rather.
On the broadband issue, could you talk a little bit more about some of the issues for Mendocino County in that arena? Because I believe there are some specifically for our.
There are.
Whoops.
Why am I muted? Okay. Anyway, I've told the carriers for years, and specifically even just cellular service, that about 50% of the time that I'm on a highway, I don't have any coverage. And even our cellular service relies on broadband in many ways. But we have these areas that are just unserved in our district. We have in my assembly district is the highest number of percentage of unserved people in the state. And so they're just, because of the geography, because of the size, and because of the population, the carriers in general have not been interested in providing robust service to people in Mendocino County, Humboldt County, Trinity County, parts of Sonoma County. There's plenty of money to be made, but it doesn't fit always in their timetables. And in other words, they expect a return on investment after X number of years, and it's going to take a little longer to get that in some of our more remote areas. So the challenge is getting access for people who simply don't have access at all right now.
So is there anything we can do as active citizens to somehow get those service providers to pay attention to us?
Well, one of the biggest impediments to providing broadband is the huge cost to build the middle mile. And once you build that middle mile, we believe there are internet service providers who are willing to do the next step. But if you're trying to build the entire network, it's really, really difficult. But to be able to tap into the middle mile as an internet service provider will be significant. There's a major project that's beginning up in Humboldt County that's starting coming in from Southeast Asia, landing near Arcata, and it's going to go all the way across to Cottonwood on Highway 5, and that's being privately built. But the builders and the funders of that have said that they will allow for internet service providers to hook up to that, so to speak, and be able to provide service to people who right now, don't have any access at all. So it's a lot of these cooperative agreements, I think, that are going to help. But you have to have the middle mile to make it all pencil out. And I think that once the middle mile is built out, that will make a huge difference for people.
Great, thank you. So what are you doing in the health committee? What's happening?
Well, last year was a big thing for me. We collaborated and worked with the governor on the creation of the Office of Healthcare Affordability. The Office of Healthcare Affordability will take and analyze market data and create targets in sectors throughout healthcare so that we can monitor the ever-increasing costs of healthcare. Each sector will have a target. If the targets aren't met, they could face financial penalties. The goal here is to use market data, and part of that market data is coming from a database that will go online later this year, which is also something I worked on 3 or 4 years ago, called the All Payer Claims Database. We'll be able to use that data to understand healthcare costs throughout healthcare, and try to come up with reasonable targets for expenditures. We can't turn the clock back. We can't drive the costs down. But what we're trying to do is to flatten the growth out. Right now, healthcare continues to rise at twice the rate of inflation. And right now, with inflation being what it is, that's pretty shocking. But we believe we can get it closer to the rate of inflation, and hopefully even below that. But it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of analysis. And throughout that process, everybody and their brother fought us on this. Hospitals, with all due respect to hospitals, doctors, groups, drug companies, you name it, everybody fought us on this. And they fought really a lot of their concern was around penalties and we're going to try to weaponize this, and no, we really aren't. I believe that there are opportunities for efficiency, and that I believe can lead to a flattening of those costs. And there are some really good players. And I want to emphasize that there are some really good players in healthcare, and we can learn from them. And there are people that provide high quality care at a good cost or good price to people. And there are opportunities there to learn. There are some groups that are egregiously taking way more than we believe they deserve, and so we'll be able to identify those people, and try to get things in line. Everything's pretty out of whack, so kind of complicated, I know, but it is something that I'm really excited about. It'll be probably the most important thing I've ever accomplished that no one will know about, and that's okay. You guys know about it now. So, we've also passed last year a bill on clarifying mental health due process rights. I'm a part of a caucus that's going to be working really hard, continue to work really hard this year on mental health issues and resources. We are still looking at consolidation in healthcare, how mergers and acquisitions can raise the costs and drive things up. Not always, but in some cases, we're seeing that. The other thing that I'm doing is a bill. We will be introducing this in probably next week or the week after, on seismic safety. So our smaller hospitals and financially distressed hospitals are really struggling to meet our seismic safety standards. And we're looking for ways. We have a way, we believe, to delay in some cases the requirement for seismic retrofits in some areas. And these are areas in general, and I'll give you an example of that. And we could even use Coast Hospital as an example. But we had a recent earthquake in Humboldt County. It was a 6.4 earthquake. And we have multiple hospitals in the area there. The only hospital that really was affected from significantly was in Garberville. Their power went out, but they have backup generators, and so they didn't lose service. There was no damage to any of the hospitals. And I think that's really significant. Many of the hospitals in our district are single story wooden structures that handle earthquakes really well. And so what we're trying to do is to, until there is some funding available for some of these really expensive retrofits, to be able to delay some of that. After, and this is the key piece, after we actually look at what it will take for each of these hospitals individually to come up to the standards, and so and based on current science. So it's kind of complicated. Once again, nothing is simple in my world. I did a simple bill last year that was really popular, though. So I've done a couple simple bills that are really popular. 2 years ago, we had our you can buy a fishing license and it's good for 365 days a year. Just doesn't matter what day you buy it on. Instead of the old way, which if you bought it in June, it was only good until January of the next year. So that's a simple bill. That one's easy to understand. We also did a bill which we thought was significant. We were approached by some of our tribal communities up in Humboldt County. In Humboldt, they were asked by Providence Hospital up there, what can we do to help the birthing experience better for families? And one of what they brought up was the public health department, the California Department of Public Health, had a requirement that you had to have a name for your child within 10 days. In many Native American communities, the naming of a child is a longer process. It's an interactive process with all the family and other members of the tribe, and they wanted more time. So we asked for we did some research. We found out that 10 days was simply an arbitrary number, and we asked for 21 days, hoping we'd get 14. And much to my surprise, we got 21 days. So it was a bill that passed with no opposition, and we were pretty excited about that. So simple stuff there, but it's important. So, and before you jump off there, I want to say I'm going to just jump in and say I see Jeff Tyrell, and it's good to see you, Jeff. Jeff is a bulldog in the fight for broadband, and so I just want to point that out, and has been working for years with the coalition in Mendocino County. So thank you, Jeff. We keep fighting because we need you.
Thank you. And I should add that Supervisor Williams is as well.
Yeah, he's
a tireless advocate for broadband in Mendocino County.
He absolutely
thank you for that.
He absolutely is. He's missing right now. I know where he was, but he's not there anymore. So
we'll get him back.
That's fine.
Well, it's because of the broadband.
Yeah, he probably.
Well, Jim, thank you for that. I wanted to circle back to my my softball question, which kind of I'm going to use the example of the potential delay of the seismic requirement for rural hospitals as a case in point. It sounds like, and we have, as I said earlier, we have interested parties here on this line about that issue, of course. So the question is, and this may circle back to using that as an example, what can you impart to us living in a county without a sustainable economic revenue stream, now that basically cannabis is gone and we don't really have, other than tourism, something coming in, dealing with state mandates that require funding while the state is in a budget shortfall? So that's kind of the general question, and maybe what initiatives are going on to help the seismic requirements delay process. Sounds like what you're looking for is some data on what it would take to bring the hospitals up to seismic standards in order to proceed. How does that work?
Yeah, in that particular case, we spent a lot of time talking with interested parties, and there's been some question as to about how much it's actually going to cost, and in some case, are some of those retrofits even necessary in light of the current science? And so I was able to divert some resources from a vaping tax that was put into place about a year ago, and divert that to a fund to help with the seismic retrofit for rural hospitals. So that fund will allow for some of these hospitals to actually have a detailed, up-to-date inspection of the costs. And one of the things we hear from is that the costs for some of these hospitals, because people have been working on this. It's not like they're not working on it, but we keep hearing that in some of these hospitals the costs are really not very much, and in some they are. And so we want to know, what is having an independent third party look at this and say, okay, what are the real costs here? And if they exceed a certain dollar amount or a percentage of revenue that will put the hospital at financial risk of closure, then we want to find a way to delay that, if we can, if it's appropriate, and if the hospital is far enough along in its process that there is still some protection. So for me, that's kind of an example of the things that I've tried to do on a regular basis, is to get people to recognize that our rural communities are not the same as large urban areas. And sometimes we need technical assistance. We need the ability to apply for different funding sources. We need extra help, quite frankly. And so I recognize, trust me, every county is going to have challenges, not just rural counties, as with the budget deficit. We're very fortunate that in general, we're in much better shape. We're in way better shape than we were in 2008, 2009, because we now have a rainy day fund that is there and can help to backfill a lot of that deficit. Some of the deficit will also be dealt with by delaying certain future projects. So there is no hard and fast answer to your question. It's kind of on a case by case, issue by issue basis, and so the seismic is an example. But if there are others out there listening or want have specific things, please throw them our way, and we're always looking for creative ways to help. But the seismic one comes out of that need, where we have rural communities that are struggling to meet these, and if without a change, the risk of losing these critical services is very high. And I know there's other opportunities out there, but this is my plea to you: help us to find those, and we will do our best to pursue them.
Thank you very much for that. I know there's just a few minutes left, and so I'm going to open it up to the floor.
And there is also a question in the chat as well.
Yes, there is.
Oh, I see. So no, I would actually, the question is, what advice would you give now to rural healthcare districts? Should they continue along with the plans for hospital seismic retrofits, or take a pause? Absolutely continue with that, because when we get to a point where we're able to offer assistance for some, it will, once that assistance comes along, the clock will keep ticking. So if you come to a grinding halt and then get resources, you're going to regret that. And so it's important to continue doing what you can, and we on the other end will do what we can to help expedite the process and make it as affordable as possible. So please don't stop.
I have a question follow up on that
Yeah.
Kathy really is there a place, or should we contact Ruth at your office if, as information starts to come in, for example, locally, on what it would take to retrofit the current hospital? Should we feed that information to you, and how should we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I know at the hospital, the building itself is owned by the healthcare district. So Adventist Health actually leases the building. So the building is the responsibility of the healthcare district. So yeah, absolutely. We want to be helpful in any way we can.
Thank you for that. Other questions? If you raise your hand through the reactions button, anybody out there have a question for Jim? Oh, Eleanor, you have your hand up. I can see it. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Well, if we get broadband out here, this seems to present a great opportunity for this community, which is remote work. Yeah. I mean, it seems like those two things could go together, but also what I'm thinking about is that there's already housing shortage here. So I don't know that we'd be attracting people in. I wonder if there's something that, I don't know. I don't really know if I have a question. I'm just sort of thinking that there's an opportunity there, but maybe I don't know how to pursue it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think broadband provides a lot of opportunities. It's healthcare, it's education, it's business, and in those communities that have robust broadband, those opportunities exist, and in a lot of our communities they don't, and that creates challenges for us. I was just meeting with this week a company that provides California licensed mental health professionals to do telehealth visits. We know the shortage of providers in geographic areas is real, and so with telehealth, there is an opportunity to help with some in some of these situations. Also with consultations with doctors and other specialists that are harder to access in communities like Fort Bragg and Mendocino and Gualala. So there's a lot of opportunity there, and broadband is really a critical piece of that now.
You know what, I have to be the bad guy because he pays me to be the bad guy. But the night goes on for us. We have a meeting at 6 and we are now 2 minutes late. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I feel
Well,
bad.
I want to thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to having you